Have you ever walked into your child's home and felt invisible? You bring a plate of cookies, a warm smile, maybe even a little story from your day, and they barely look up from their phones. You ask how they're doing, and they say fine, without even looking you in the eyes. You sit quietly on the edge of the couch while their lives whirl around you. Schedules, errands, work calls, soccer practice, digital noise. And in that moment, even though you're surrounded by the people you raised with every ounce of your being, you feel more alone than ever. If that sounds familiar, you're not the only one. There comes a time in life when the roles shift, when the very children you carried, protected, and poured your soul into seem to have moved on without you. It's not always because they're cruel or heartless. Sometimes it's just because life has sped up for them and slowed down for you. But that doesn't make the ache any easier. So why are we talking about this today? Because your peace, your sense of dignity, your right to feel valued, they matter now more than ever. And because too many of us in our older years keep showing up in places and in relationships where we are no longer honored, not because we're weak or desperate, but because we were never taught how to stop seeking approval and start protecting our worth. Today, I want to talk with you about something that might sound harsh at first, but I promise it comes from a place of deep care. It's this: you shouldn't visit your children in old age unless your presence is welcomed, not just tolerated. I know that's a heavy statement, but stay with me. Let's have this honest conversation together. Not out of bitterness, but out of wisdom, out of love for yourself. You see, for most of your life, your identity was tied to being a parent. You were the one up at 2 a.m. with a sick child, the one who worked extra shifts to pay for their education, the one who quietly gave up your dreams so they could chase theirs. Being a mom or dad wasn't just a role, it was your heartbeat. But now you're in a different season. You're no longer the one they turn to for answers. You might not be the first person they call when something goes wrong, and in some cases they don't call at all. It hurts, let's not pretend it doesn't. It hurts to give so much of yourself to someone and then feel like a forgotten chapter in their story. But here's where it gets even harder. Many older parents, especially those in their 60s, 70s and beyond, find themselves chasing scraps of connection. They keep showing up, keep offering help, keep inviting themselves into their kids' lives, not out of desperation, but out of habit, out of love, out of a deep, quiet hope that one day their children will pause, look them in the eye and say, "I see you. I appreciate you. I still need you." And when that moment doesn't come, it carves a hole you don't talk about, not with friends, not even with yourself. Now let's be clear. This isn't about cutting off your children or turning cold. It's not about pride or punishment. It's about boundaries, emotional, spiritual, and even physical boundaries that protect your well-being. Because here's a truth we don't say enough. Respect isn't automatic. Not even from your children. It should be, but in the world we live in today, fast-paced, digital, distracted, it is. And when you show up somewhere hoping for acknowledgement but are met with indifference, it chips away at your spirit. You are not meant to be a guest in a home you helped build, but sadly, that's what many older adults become. Guests, or worse, obligations. Something to get through between conference calls and soccer games, and you feel it in the sighs, the distracted nods, the way they glance at the clock when you're speaking. So here's the hard question. Why do you keep putting yourself in that position? You have value that's not defined by their recognition. Your stories, your wisdom, your presence. These are treasures, not burdens, but the world won't treat them that way unless you lead the way. You have to show others how to treat you by how you treat yourself. You deserve to be around people who light up when you walk into the room, people who ask you questions and wait for the answer, people who don't mind slowing down a little to meet you where you are. And if your children aren't in a place where they can offer that, then maybe it's time to stop knocking on that door. Maybe it's time to build something new. I've spoken with many older parents, men and women in their 60s, 70s, even late 80s, who realized, sometimes too late, that their emotional world was completely wrapped around their children, their schedule, their mood, their sense of self-worth. All of it hinged on whether their kids called, visited, or remembered their birthday. That's too much power to give anyone, even your own flesh and blood, especially when that power isn't handled with care. What if instead you poured that love, that attention, that energy into places where it would grow? What if you started showing up for yourself the way you once showed up for everyone else? You don't have to explain your worth. You don't have to earn a seat at the table. You are not a remnant of the past. You are not what's left. You are still here, still whole, still necessary. Not because your kids say so, but because you say so. You raise them to live their lives. That's exactly what they're doing. Now it's your turn to live yours. And that starts by protecting your peace. That starts by choosing not to walk into spaces or relationships where you leave feeling smaller than you were before. It means no longer chasing crumbs of affection from people too busy or too distracted to see your worth. That might mean saying no to the invitation that feels more like an obligation. That might mean skipping a holiday if you know you'll be sitting alone in a crowded room. That might mean letting go of the fantasy that they'll suddenly become the loving, attentive adult you imagine they'd. But it also means you get to say yes to something else. To quiet mornings without pressure. To new friendships. To hobbies you never had time for. To sitting under the trees with a cup of coffee and not checking your phone because finally you've stopped waiting for a message that may never come. You're not giving up on them. You're showing up for yourself. And when, if they do come around again with open hearts and open arms, you'll be ready, whole, centered, not needing their approval but open to their presence. You'll greet them, not with bitterness, but with calm strength. Not with desperation, but with quiet joy, because by then, you'll know your worth was never theirs to define. And when you begin to live that way, not in reaction to how others treat you, but in alignment with how you choose to treat yourself, something incredible happens. You begin to glow in a way that no one can ignore. You stop moving through life trying to be seen and instead you become someone worth noticing. This shift doesn't happen overnight. For many parents, especially mothers and fathers who have spent decades in the role of caregiver, nurturer, provider, it can feel almost unnatural to pull back, to stop giving, to stop showing up at every beck and call. You've trained your heart to respond every time they needed something, but now when you need something, presence, time, respect, the room goes quiet. It's okay to grieve that. It's okay to mourn what you thought this stage of life would look like. Maybe you dreamed of family dinners every weekend, the house full of laughter, your grandchildren running into your arms, your children calling just to hear your voice. And maybe you got some of that, sometimes. But maybe for reasons you may never fully understand, things didn't unfold that way. Here's what I want you to hear, with your whole heart. Just because you were not cherished the way you hoped, doesn't mean you are unworthy of love. Let that sink in for a moment. You can't force others to see your value, but you can absolutely live in a way that reflects it. And one of the most powerful ways to do that, especially in your later years, is to stop going where you are not fully welcomed. That includes your children's homes if going there leaves you feeling smaller, unheard, or invisible. You don't need to prove anything to them. Not anymore. You did your part. You did the hard work. You stayed up through the fevers, worked through the stress, sacrificed through the decades. You've already given the best years of your life. Now it's time to give yourself the rest of your years, and let them be good, peaceful, and deeply yours. And maybe you're thinking, but I want to be in their lives. I want to see my grandkids grow. I want to stay connected. That's natural. Connection is a basic human need, but connection that comes at the cost of your dignity is not connection, it's emotional erosion. You can still love your children deeply while protecting your own peace. You can still send them birthday cards, pray for them, hold space for their lives, but choose not to be physically present if your presence is dismissed or disrespected. And you can do all of this without bitterness, because this isn't about cutting ties, it's about setting boundaries. The boundaries are not punishments, they're reminders for others and for yourself that your time, energy and presence are precious, that you are not a placeholder, you are not a convenience, you are not a piece of old furniture that just gets moved around the room and ignored. You are still growing, still dreaming, still here. So how do you begin to rebuild life around that truth? Start small. Maybe it means finally joining that senior book club you've been thinking about. Maybe it's taking a walk every morning without checking your phone, letting the rhythm of your footsteps remind you that you're moving forward, literally and emotionally. Maybe it's picking up a pen and writing out your stories, not so your children will read them, but so that your voice, your own voice, will be heard by someone, even if that someone is just you. There's something deeply healing about doing things for yourself, not out of spite, but out of self-respect. Some of the strongest people I've ever met are those who've learned to find joy outside of the people they once revolved their entire lives around. They've learned to cultivate meaning in their gardens, in their friendships, in their memories, even in the quiet. And that quiet, it doesn't have to be lonely. It can be the softest kind of peace. That doesn't mean you won't have moments of sorrow. There will be birthdays they forget to call, holidays when you sit at your own table, pictures you only see posted online instead of being invited to take part in. Let yourself feel the ache when it comes, but don't live in it. Feel it, breathe through it, and then come back to yourself, because you are your home now, and that home can be warm, comforting and full of life, even if some people never knock on the door again. You are allowed to protect your joy, to say no to visits that drain you, to stop hoping for something different, and instead build something new. You're not being mean, you're not being selfish, you're being wise. And as the days pass and the years settle in, you'll begin to see there are others out there who will see you, neighbors, community members, other elders walking the same road, people who will hear your stories and not people who will look you in the eye and really listen. People who will share tea, laughter, silence, all the little things that remind you how deeply human and valuable you still are. So, instead of visiting the places that hurt, invest in the spaces that heal. You get to create those spaces. You get to choose who sits at your table. You get to decide how the next chapter of your life is written. And when you write it with courage, with clarity, and with care, you'll realize that your life doesn't shrink when others don't show up. It expands when you show up for yourself. Sometimes people ask me, isn't it wrong to distance yourself from your own children? And my answer is always gentle but firm. It's not wrong to choose peace. It's not wrong to protect your heart. What's wrong is believing that you have to keep showing up to places where you feel small. Just because you once mattered there, you are still here. That matters more than anything. We're told that family is everything, and in many ways it is. But sometimes the most loving thing you can do for your family is to stop expecting them to fill your cup. Because, if they aren't capable or willing, all you'll do is drain yourself chasing the love you once gave so freely. It's not about bitterness. It's not about punishment. It's about choosing dignity over disappointment. You have already done the hard part. You carried them, raised them, gave your best years to their needs. You don't owe them the rest of your life too. Especially not if they treat your presence like background noise. I've seen too many good, kind, loving people shrink in their later years, not because their bodies gave up, but because their spirits were worn down by being ignored, being tolerated, being visited like a relic of the past. It's a pain that doesn't show up on a medical chart, but it eats away at joy just the same. And you know what's even more tragic? Most of them stay silent. They don't want to upset anyone. They don't want to be seen as needy or difficult, so they keep smiling, keep showing up, keep hoping. This time will be different, but hope without change becomes heartbreak. And you deserve more than that. You deserve to be respected, not just for what you've done, but for who you are now. Not because you gave life to someone, but because your own life is still sacred, still vibrant, still worth protecting. So, if you feel that ache in your chest when you leave your child's house, that sense of having been dismissed, diminished, or simply unseen, don't ignore it. That ache is your soul's way of asking for boundaries. Listen to it, and let's be honest, some children do come around, some do grow into maturity, Some do realize what a gift it is to have a parent still living, still breathing, still offering wisdom and love. And when that happens, when they truly come to you, not out of obligation but out of honor, then welcome them with open arms. But don't wait for that moment at the cost of your own joy. Go where your presence is celebrated, not merely accept. Your later years should not be spent proving your worth. They should be spent enjoying your life, building new connections, and finally having time for you. You were the root that held the tree upright. You were the warmth in the room when money was tight and dreams were far away. You were the one who stayed, even when you had every reason to walk away. That kind of love should never have to beg. So don't beg. Don't beg to be included. Don't beg to be heard. Don't beg to be seen. Live. Live in such a way that even if no one claps for you, that even if no one calls, you still sing. That even if no one notices, you still rise every morning with quiet purpose and grace. And if you do visit them, do it from a place of strength, not longing. Let your presence carry peace, not plead. Show up as someone who is full, not someone hoping to be filled. Because here's the truth. When you walk into a room fully at peace with who you are, people feel it. They may not understand it. They may not say it out loud, but they sense, and in time, they may come to respect it. Not because you demanded it, but because you embodied it. And when they do, when they finally see you, truly see you, let them. But until that day, keep building your life. Join that morning walking group. Volunteer at the local library. Pick up your paintbrush, your knitting needles, your journal. Laugh with the neighbor across the hall. Say yes to dinner with a friend. Take a slow stroll in the park and feel the breeze on your skin like a blessing. Create beauty where you are. Make memories that don't need anyone else's permission. Be the elder you once needed, the one who walks with wisdom, not wounds, because the world may have forgotten, but you have not. You are the culmination of stories, sacrifices, and strength. You are the living proof that love can survive even when it is not returned. And one more thing, you don't have to apologize for protecting your spirit. You don't have to explain why you chose not to visit this holiday, or why you left early, or why you stopped calling first. That's not being cold. That's being careful with a heart that's already given so much. Let silence do some of the talking. Let your absence speak what your presence no longer can. Sometimes it is the quiet withdrawal that teaches others how deeply they have overlooked something precious. And if they learn, truly learn, they'll reach out not with guilt but with grace, not to fix what was broken, but to build something new. And if they never do, then let your life be the garden that still blooms, the song that still plays, the peace that still radiates. You don't need to be needed to be important. You don't need to be wanted to be worthy. You are enough, and you always have been. So what now? Now that you've been honest with yourself, really honest about what hurts, about what's changed, and about what you need moving forward, where do you go from here? You go inward, you go outward, and most importantly, you go forward. There's a kind of freedom that comes when you stop expecting someone else to give you what you already have inside. It's not an easy freedom. It's not flashy or loud. It's quiet, steady, and powerful. The kind that lets you wake up in the morning without bitterness in your chest, without waiting for a phone call that never comes. It's the freedom of finally being the main character in your own story again. You don't owe anyone an explanation for choosing yourself, for choosing to live these years, not in someone's shadow, but in your own light, for choosing to walk away from a room where you feel invisible and into a space, even if it's smaller, where you feel alive. And that space, it's waiting for you. Maybe it's the community center down the street with Thursday afternoon board games and good coffee. Maybe it's the park bench near the rose garden, where strangers become friends with just one smile. Maybe it's a small circle of women who meet on Sundays to talk about life after 60, or the group of men who tinker with old radios and talk about the music of their youth. Maybe it's just your living room, filled with books, memories, your favorite chair, and finally peace. It doesn't have to be fancy. It doesn't have to be full. It just has to be yours. And if your children don't make space for you in their lives, You make space for yourself in the world. If they don't ask how you're doing, you check in with yourself. If they don't celebrate you, you celebrate because you're still here. You're still breathing, and that is no small thing. So many people never get the gift of growing older, but you have. And no matter what your relationship with your kids looks like now, you still have the power to make these years meaningful. You have stories to share, laughter to give, hands that can still create beauty, a heart that still holds so much love, even if that love now needs to be poured into new soil. Yes, family matters, but so does your spirit, so does your peace of mind, so does your dignity. If you've spent most of your life giving and giving, now is the time to receive. Not from others who forget, but from the world around you, from nature, from community, from your faith, if you have one, and most of all from yourself. You are still allowed to matter, even if your children don't remind you of it. You are allowed to laugh loudly, love deeply, speak your mind, change your routine, try something new, make mistakes, wear what you want, go where you please, and live in such a way that your happiness does not depend on anyone's approval. You're not stuck in the role of parent anymore. You're free now to be something more, something richer, something fuller, an elder with presence, a soul with power, a person with nothing to prove and everything to enjoy. And if one day your children knock on your door, not out of guilt, but out of genuine respect and longing, you can let them in, not from a place of need, but from a place of love. You can look them in the eye without flinching. You can welcome them into your world, not because you're hoping to be remembered, but because you never forgot your own worth until that day, or even if that day never comes. Live with joy, with curiosity, with grace. Live slowly or boldly, but always on your terms. Live not for the approval of others, but for the healing of yourself. This isn't the end of your story, it's a turning point. So if you've made it this far with me, I want to say this to you from one soul to another. You are not forgotten. You are not alone. You are not too old to begin again. You are exactly where you need to be to begin living the part of your life that's finally for you. So here's to the quiet mornings, the deep conversations, the unhurried days, the surprising new friendships, the long walks, the books you'll finally finish, the songs you'll sing just for fun, the meals you'll cook just because you like the smell of garlic and butter. Here's to the laughter that no one else hears, the peace that no one can steal, the dignity that no one has the right to touch. Here's to you. If this message spoke to something deep inside you, if you've ever felt the ache of being invisible or the sting of being ignored, I invite you to share your story in the comments. Not because you need to justify your feelings, but because your voice matters. And if you found even a sliver of strength or clarity in this conversation, please take a moment to like this video and subscribe to my channel. This is a space for truth, for healing, and for honoring the life you've built and the life that's still waiting to be lived. Here's to walking forward with quiet power, to choosing peace over people-pleasing, and to living your best life, not for them, but for you, because you deserve that, and so much more. We'll see you again soon. Until then, take care of your heart. It's carried so much. Now it's time to let it rest and rise.